Okay, today we're going to do a little shop talk. And what I'm going to talk about today is preparing your bike for maybe a big ride or a race or something like that. Just some details to look for as you go around your bike and get it ready for your race. So when you're looking over your bike, there's a whole bunch of things that you need to just take a look at. And we recommend always keeping your bike washed. And when you go to wash it, it's not just blasted with some hose, with a hose or a pressure washer or something like that, but then dry the bike off with a towel or whatever. And that's when you're toweling it and that, you'll find maybe something that's loose, or a bolt that's come out. You look at it as you're wiping it down, and it gives you a chance to assess the bike a little bit. So I recommend keep your bikes clean. When you go to prep them for a ride, don't prep them all muddy, dirty, full of dust, or whatever your conditions are. Check them over good. Now you can just take a T-handle, like this is a 8mm T-handle, and just walk around. Check all the nuts and bolts and make sure they're tight. Check the way the brake or the controls are working. I mean, how's the pedal feel? Is it in the right position? I run mine just a little bit lower than some guys. They like to have them level. I like mine a little bit lower. I got big feet, so they drag on there a little bit. This is important stuff. Take a look at your brakes. Look at your brake pads here. The brake pads, when you look at them from the back, you'll be able to see if there's still thickness here. The thicker brake pad, these are probably about what I would consider half worn right now. And you can check it, spin the wheel. That way you can hear if it's dragging or if a bolt's come loose or something and it's hitting on something. You want to look for all those little details as you go around your bike. Now come around the other side and check your chain. Now I just washed this bike and I haven't done any of my usual maintenance on it. Check the chain and see what the slack is on it. You don't want it too loose and you don't want it too tight. Tight is worse than too loose. Now what I'll do is I'll put my fingers under here and then my phone will ring. Okay, the chain tension, we were taking a look at that. Now, for a quick check, if I can get 3 fingers under here, I know it's loose enough. 2 fingers under there is a little bit tight. And what happens if your chain is too tight? You put a load on the swing arm every time the swing arm moves up, because when the swing arm moves up, it's moving in 2 different arcs from the countershaft sprocket, and it'll get too tight as it gets up to the bottom of the thing, and it can wear out the bearing in the rear axle. You can damage the case, the bearing on the countershaft sprocket, and even just as bad as you stretch your chain, you overwork your sprocket so that then the sprocket gets all tore up. So this is a quick way to check it. Right there at the edge of the tire, run 3 fingers in. I got plenty of distance there, okay? Then, most of you guys are already going to do this. You're going to pull your air cleaner out, clean your air cleaner, make sure it's seated in there nice and tight, and do all of that. Regular air cleaner maintenance. We're going to change the transmission oil. This is a 2-stroke. And oil, let me tell you, boys and girls, oil is cheap compared to engine replacement parts. So I would change it often. You don't have to change it every ride. That's probably a little bit overboard. But change your engine oil on a very regular basis. If you got a big ride coming up, change your oil. If you went out and rode 100 miles, 150 miles, then change your oil. It just saves the transmission and the clutch and all of that stuff. We have in our Shop Talks. If you go back and you look at Bike Guys Off-Road on YouTube, you'll see that we have a video on how to properly clean your air cleaner. Some guys just don't know. Nobody ever took the time to show them. So we'll go through that. So working our way around, make sure that everything is working and is smooth. A lot of times I'll take a little WD-40 or Tri-Flow or something and I'll spray these pins and that so I know everything is moving smoothly, and it helps that. Again, you're taking your T-handle and go around and just check all the nuts and bolts. Check them all and just make sure that nothing is coming loose. So then you want to check all your controls. How are your controls working? Now on this one, I'll just show you this. I took a fall, slid backwards down on a big slab rock, and I tore the end of my grip. So I need to replace this grip. But make sure that your controls are in the right position. Make sure that the bolts and stuff are tight, not over tight, because you need to have a little flex in there. But check this stuff, look at it. Make sure your handlebars are tight. Make sure your throttle, it should snap. Hear that snap? Your throttle should move that smooth. And it should snap to closed. Because one thing that's terrible thing is to have a stuck throttle. So check it. Check your brakes. Make sure that it's not spongy or something like that. Speaking of brakes, take a look at the front brake set. I lift the thing up, I spin it. I don't hear anything scraping or rubbing or anything like that. That means it's running true in the forks. When you set up your forks and you tighten your triple clamps and your wheel spacer distance on there, you want to make sure that everything's in alignment. And the way we'll do a video on how to check the alignment on the front. But if some guys push the two ends together too tight, then the forks are going down at different angles and it creates a bind on the forks. So you want to look at that. Now, while we're right here, let's go back and look at this. Check your spokes before you go riding. And all you got to do, listen to them. I mean, it's better with a screwdriver or a small wrench or something like that. And if they all have the same sound, they all have the same tension on them. And you need to look at the spokes. Look at both sides, look at both wheels. Make sure your spokes are tight. Right there. Just I can feel it. This one here is just a little bit loose. You take your spoke wrench and just tighten it up a little bit. You don't have to tighten it like a bunch of turns. Maybe just even a quarter turn will bring the spoke back into compliance. So you want to look at that stuff. You want to make sure that your exhaust system, there's nothing loose. It's all tight, okay? Check your bolts. Make sure everything's good here. Your muffler's on good. It's going to stay. We're not going to go into the suspension and stuff like that because we're just getting the bike ready to go for a race or whatever. One other thing you want to do is look in your radiator. Do you know how many times I've run into guys out on the trail and they're out of radiator fluid or it's low? Have a look down in there. You should be able to see the radiator coolant in there, okay? If you can't see it, it's definitely low. Doesn't have to be top to the very top, but you need to be able to see it. It needs to be above the fins, okay? So just check those things. And as you're going, make sure your wires and just give it a quick look over. Make sure the little zip tie didn't break and come off, and now you're going to hook it on something and tear it out when you're out on the trail. So look your bike over really well. Here, I got the long skid plate, the S skid plate on here. You want to check when you're draining the oil and that, check the bolts and stuff for your skid plate. Now some bikes you have to pull the skid plate off to change the oil. That's a pretty simple thing. Same thing in the back. Check your spokes. Check your tire pressure. My goodness, I see guys out there running and their tire pressures are all off. You know, maybe you changed the tire and you filled it up to 40 pounds to seat the bead and you forgot to let it down. Ooh, that's bad. Now you got 40 pounds in your tire? Or even worse, what if you only got 4 pounds in your tire? Now you got another problem. Check your tire pressure before you leave. Don't go out on the trail and then discover your tires are going flat. You're not going to have a good day. So that's a basic walk around on your bike to be ready for a race or a good long trail ride. And that, don't be that guy. You know what I'm talking about? Don't be that guy that you get out on the trail, his brake pedal falls off, the chain's too tight, the tire's flat, he didn't change his oil, it's overboiling. I hate going riding with guys who don't take care of their machines. And you need to do the same thing. Take care of your machine. They're a big investment. You want it to last as long as it can last. And if you just walk around it and do some regular maintenance on your bike, it only takes 15, 20 minutes and you're ready to go, okay? To do all of those things that we just talked about. And we'll have more in-depth stuff coming up, so stick around. And we appreciate your comments. In the comment line, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and stay in touch. Talk to you soon.